All right, we are now live.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Vice Mayor and Chair of the Board and Commissions Committee, and I'd like to welcome you all to the November 14th, 2023 remote meeting. All council and committee members and staff are participating virtually. And to help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud. And we are streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city's website. We also have an option for the public to listen by phone. And for those of you out there today, we'd like to welcome you. And for today's meeting, we have the option for people to call in and comment live during the meeting. To call in and comment live, use the same number, 855-925-2801, meeting code 9478. Your phone will be muted and you'll hear the meeting live. At this point, speakers will need to push *3 to enter into the speaking queue. And at this time, I'd like to do a roll call. I'd like to go through and introduce all the committee members and staff who are participating virtually. Council and staff, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Councilwoman Antoinette Mosley.
Hello.
Councilwoman Kim Rooney.
Good afternoon.
Assistant City Manager Ben Woody.
Good afternoon.
Deputy City Clerk Sarah Cross.
Good afternoon.
Assistant City Clerk Jerry Goldberg.
Good afternoon.
And we also have guest presenters who will introduce themselves shortly. And first of all, first thing on our agenda today is we'd like to first get a motion to approve the October minutes. Can I get a motion?
So moved. This is Kim, second.
Thank you. We have a first and second. Okay, roll call. Antoinette Mosley.
Aye.
Councilwoman Rooney.
Aye.
And myself, aye. Okay, the motion passes. Next, I'd like to open up public comment and to see if we have anyone in the queue.
We don't have any callers in the queue.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move to new business on the agenda. And the first item of new business is to hear the recommendation to amend the Public Art and Cultural Commission ordinance. I'll now turn it over to urban designer Carly Stevenson for that presentation.
Hi, and thank you. Sarah, were you going to present on your end?
Oh, I can do that. Yes, one moment. Sorry, one moment.
Oh, good. What about Chris? Where is Chris?
Yeah, I don't. Great, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm Carly Stevenson with Planning and Urban Design. I am a 50% of the time urban designer and 50% of the time public art coordinator on that team. And I'm also newly the primary staff liaison for the Public Art and Cultural Commission. So I'm going to go over the Commission's proposed revisions to their ordinance today in hopes that this committee will move to recommend that this moves to City Council for adoption. Next slide, please. So this is the Public Art and Cultural Commission's mission statement per the ordinance. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but I encourage you to do so. Our revisions that we're proposing touch on all of these words that are highlighted in bold, but in particular, the engage the creative sector as a major attraction for artists, cultural tourism, and economic development, and also the building partnerships and collaborations throughout Asheville's creative community. So just keep that in mind as we're moving through. Next slide, please. This is our current membership of the Public Art and Cultural Commission. We have 9 seats on the commission, and we are not proposing to change that number moving forward with our revisions. And you'll notice we have 2 members who are rolling off. Their terms are coming to an end, Katie Cornell and Andrew Fletcher. And then we have 2 vacant seats. And we are hoping to fill these seats in January after the winter cycle, and also being able to fill those seats paired with these ordinance updates and changes that we're recommending. We're really hoping to take advantage of this transition in membership to stitch together a group with diverse perspectives and expertise. So next. This is a brief history of the PAC, though it has a lot of words on the slide. I am going to call your attention to just a couple things on here. The first is the gray boxes are outlining dates when ordinance changes were made. So in 1999, that was when the Public Art Board was established by City Council, now known as the Public Art and Cultural Commission. And then 2010, 2011, there were some changes to the ordinance that were made along with public art policy and implementation changes. And the name was officially changed to PAC. The other thing I wanted to call out on this timeline are the blue lines with asterisks, and this is showing how the staffing, the staff support for the Public Art and Cultural Commission has changed over time. So in the 1999-2009 time period, there was a full-time public art person who was running the public art program and was also the staff liaison for PAC, and that was within Parks and Rec. That position was eliminated or terminated in 2011 timeframe. Then the PAC staff liaison moved to a staff person within the Office of Economic Development, and they ran the public art program and also were the staff support for PAC in addition to their other responsibilities. And then this sort of setup continued. However, it shifted again to planning and urban design. So just to kind of give some background, show some of the shifting that's happening, and to call attention to why some of these proposed revisions are occurring now. Next slide, please. So why we are updating. As mentioned, the ordinance has not been reviewed since 2011, so there are a lot of housekeeping items. That includes the changing the staff support within the ordinance from Parks and Rec to planning and urban design. It also includes expanding the scope of what the commission considers or advises on to festivals and performances, so adding that to the public art definition within the ordinance. And then in the effort to increase membership engagement and encourage partnerships and create a balanced membership, we are wanting to change the composition of membership to include standing seats for arts organizations, and as well as including language that is intentional about equity and inclusion and gender neutral. Next slide, please. So getting into the meat of the ordinance revisions, the commission would like to change the name from the Public Art and Cultural Commission to Culture Commission, and that is merely grammatical, just sounds correct, and the commission all agreed that they like that better. Changing that staff support from from Parks and Recreation to Planning and Urban Design. And then this is the public art definition that is proposed in the ordinance. So that now includes performances and festivals in the scope of what PAC will consider. Next slide. And then looking at the composition, keeping those 9 voting members, but proposing that 6 of the members are appointed by City Council from the private sector, and 3 of the members will be appointed by the directors or chairs from the following. 1 member to be appointed by Arts ABL or the designated arts organization for Buncombe County, 1 member to be appointed by Explore Asheville, and 1 member to be appointed from a local higher education institution with a designated arts program. And there are multiple advantages to distributing membership this way. One is that it ties in nicely with these organizations' missions. So Arts ABL, one of their main goals or priorities is being a liaison with government, both county and city, on the arts. And for Explore Asheville, one of their big things is promoting and supporting the community's creative spirit. And then, of course, with, the higher level arts education institutions, it is teaching and educating our young artists and hopefully, keeping them here through connecting them with arts organizations and opportunities that we can all help promote through these various organizations. And then this also allows PAC to tap into resources and partnerships that are region-wide. So that is, arts expertise in administration, technical aspects of arts programs and implementations, and then also marketing and promotion for our artists. And then really looking at artists themselves that partner with these different organizations. So it's just increasing this pool of resources that we can make sure that we're at the table with and inviting into our meetings. And just a quick note too, for the arts, the local higher education institutions, we're expanding that to Buncombe County. So we're looking at arts institutions throughout Buncombe County. So that could be UNCA, AB Tech, Warren Wilson. And we have been in contact with all of the directors and people involved with these organizations, and they have expressed an interest in having seats. So next slide. Timeline-wise, on September 21st, this was when these proposed ordinance updates were approved by the Commission. Today, presenting to you all for your review and feedback, and we're hoping to bring to City Council on December 12th. Next slide, please. And just a quick snapshot of our other priorities. Calling particular attention to the cultural, public art, and master plan update. I know that the Commission has just discussed this being a regional thing. So having those permanent seat members and those partnerships really helpful in the development of this. And then also continued program development, strategic partnerships, another component part, important part of our priorities moving forward. And that will also be greatly assisted with this membership and composition change. And with that, I'll wrap up and open it up for questions.
Okay. Councilwoman Rooney.
Yeah, thank you, Carly. Could you go back to the slide that suggests designated seats? I guess I was curious, and maybe, okay. The next one, it has that one, Arts AVL. Okay. I guess I'm curious because if it said something like maybe the symphony would be appointed, it seems curious to me when I think about the amount of competition for arts and cultural events in our community, and who has seats at the table when we have so many small organizations. And I wonder if we could get some more information on why Explore Asheville was recommended for appointment, in the sense that there might be conflict of interest if there's a sponsored event. What would happen in a situation where there was a decision made for prioritization of funding, for example?
Yeah, I think in those instances, that member would not vote, like if there was a particular thing that we were deliberating on or needed to take action on that involved an event that was being funded. I think I'll allow Steph to speak up on this as well as to why Explore Asheville was decided upon. But my understanding is that it is their reach and their ability to help us promote and spread the word about different events and events that artists are participating in our community, and spread that regionally. So it's a way to help support our artists and also to allow people that are coming into our community to know what's going on.
I appreciate that. And Steph, maybe you can help me answer this too. If we were thinking about organizations that put on events here that have reach, we could have AC Entertainment at the table. It seems that would be an odd reason to appoint that seat.
So there was a lot of discussion about this. It's a great point. And one of the things that we struggled with, or that's not really a struggle, but one of the things we contended with was how public something is or not. So for example, the symphony does provide some events in a public sphere, but the majority of their work is privatized ticketed events that occurs in a different space. Similar with AC Entertainment, most of their events are not open to the public. So we wanted to maintain a real focus on things that were the most publicly accessible and that the city would potentially be investing in. What I'd say is it's a one step forward. Eventually, what the group would like to do is make sure that every seat on the Public Art and Cultural Commission is potentially designated for an arts organization. So if you look at the city of Seattle, Washington, they have very specific seats. I think it's an 11-person commission, and those organizations that are running around in your head that are, whether they're a small organization or a large organization, but they provide a big impact and need to be represented. That is more what it looks like. So in the interim, we're starting with some of the more broader scoped organizations, opposed to like someone who does puppetry arts or a person who's doing the symphony. We're starting with the broader scoped organizations and bringing them to the table and seeing how that works for a year or two. In addition, these folks are going to help us think about what the future of the public art program looks like, because that kind of sidebar on here, those policies also need to be updated. So I think it's a possibility, and what you're doing is future casting, just like they were, and saying this is where we need to go. If that makes sense.
It does. And while we're not really looking at the tremendous workforce in this industry sector, I'm curious. If we're only going to go with these three, we're leaving out the Asheville Music Professionals is a huge organization. I'd be inclined, because Arts AVL is a partner with us on our events programming, and I understand the local higher education institute with the designated arts program, to start with just those two and say 7 members to be appointed by the city council at large, and 2 members designated from Arts AVL and from a local higher education institution, simply because of the competition for private events, because Explore Asheville also has private events.
Do understand that. Wanted to respond to something here. I'll think about it. We'll take some more feedback, and then I'll see if there's something that I can share as well.
Do we have any more comments or questions or Carly?
Since we're being asked to send this forward for a final action from council, I'm happy to make that motion if there are no other questions.
Okay, Kim, are you going to make it? Okay, excuse me. Councilwoman Mosley?
So there's nothing that says we couldn't keep Explore Asheville and then at a later point add another seat, right? Stephanie?
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
I'd be more inclined to accept it the way it is, with the understanding that we're open to adding additional seats.
Exactly. I do. I sort of agree with that remark.
And I appreciate, I would want to respond a little bit to one of the things Kim said is, that we want to encourage these other organizations to be at the table. We, as to just reiterate, Carly noted, we're going to have 4 open seats. So 2 of the, at least 2 of those are going to be new. One of the seats that is being vacated already has Arts AVL's executive director in it. So they would be kind of just replacing that one seat. But our group here is a pretty awesome spectrum from around the arts community. So we have had a lot of people who are, just artists, whether they're freelance artists or people who, the head of the AIGA just rolled off last year. I want us to think about outreach for all of our boards and commissions. And I hope that in your next presentation where you talk about the realignment and restructuring, that comes into play too. It's on all of us to make sure that those variety of open seats get filled with people who represent our community. And, staff takes that pretty seriously. I'll just also say that you saw last month, the Riverfront Commission, which is also staffed by Planning and Urban Design, also recently went through a restructuring with new membership. And both of these actual ordinances have language that specifies to the appointing board partners that we're looking for them to be really thoughtful about making sure that their membership represents our community and creates an equitable and diverse board as a whole, so that they're not just appointing someone that feels good to them and it's an easy pick. So I would encourage you, you will see when this gets to council, to look at that ordinance in detail. That might make you feel pretty excited about what's being proposed here.
This is Kim. I do feel excited about the majority of what's being proposed. And also I'm really excited about some of the conversations we're having about the Pack Square visioning and what it means for the future of public art and culture at the heart of our city. So I'm going to go ahead and move to recommend to council the 7 at-large seats with a designee from the Arts AVL and from the higher public education institution. And I understand that may fail today, but I think it's the strongest step for us moving forward in keeping seats open for the community at large, understanding that Explore Asheville representatives may also apply for the at-large seats.
I'm trying to understand the motion. Are you making the motion that's in our packet? Or
I'm making the amended motion as suggested, which would be the 7 at-large seats and the 2 without Explore Asheville. And at this point, I don't hear a second, in which case the chair would typically say something like, not having heard a second, the motion has failed.
Yes. Not having a second, the motion has failed. So I guess, would anyone at this time, we'd like to move this motion on to full council.
I'll make that motion if you like.
Thank you.
I move to recommend adoption of the revisions to Article 3, Chapter 2, Division 11 of the Code of Ordinances regarding the Public Art and Cultural Commission.
Okay, Sandra, I'll second. Okay, so now what we'll do is take a roll call. Councilwoman Antoinette Mostyn.
Aye.
Councilwoman Rumby.
For the matters already expressed, I must say no today.
Okay. And myself, aye. Motion passes. It will be moved on to council for full vote. Thank you. Okay, and our last item of business is to hear from the realignment working group members about their report and findings for the board and commission's member survey. And I'll turn it over to Stacy Anderson, who's chair of the working group, for her presentation. Okay, this will be opened up for the committee for questions and discussion.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Good afternoon. I am Stacy Anderson, and I had the pleasure of working with my fellow Ashevilleans, Alan Eskovitz, Patrick Connett, Elise Martyr, Jack Hafeli, and Ted Figura, and many, many others on this project. Thank you to Vice Mayor Kilgore, Council Members Roney and Mosley for inviting us here with you today. Back in February 2022, the city had a series of community virtual meetings to open discussion regarding a staff-driven plan to reorganize council committees, align citizen advisory boards and commissions, and consider reducing the number of boards. In May, over 18 months ago, a group of over 50 residents gathered to express strong and overwhelming opposition to the proposed restricting of redesign of the boards and commissions. As a result of this public feedback, city staff took a step back, and a grassroots citizen group formed and determined that more research and feedback was needed to form a better structure for boards and commissions in Asheville. And that's where we are today. We are presenting the results of an extensive survey with a strong response rate. We are happy to take questions at the end of Elise's presentation. Elise, you're on.
Thank you, Stacy, for providing all of that background. I'm Elise Martyr, and I'm going to share some findings from our survey with you today. We have been working on this for quite a while, and although we're not ready to make recommendations at this time, we did feel this was an important milestone and could impact some of the concurrent work of the clerk's office. So let's talk about the survey itself first. In order to make any recommendations, we wanted to better understand the experiences of board members and capture what was being heard anecdotally in a more concrete way. I am going to use the term board throughout this presentation to refer to both boards and commissions, and specifically volunteer advisory boards. So we prepared a survey with a variety of different question types covering a range of categories, and we sent that survey to over 350 board members dating back to 2012. The survey was administered through the city's public engagement hub, public input, as you might know it. And we got 150 responses, which is about a 40% response rate. And in terms of surveys, it's pretty good. We also found that the response rate for each question was about 70%. And we can extrapolate from that about 70% of the 150 respondents actually completed the survey. During this presentation, I'm going to give you a high-level summary of the findings from that survey. There's a lot more depth in here that we don't have time for today, but I do really encourage you to read our full report, which is linked on this slide. And Sarah, if I need to provide that link for you later for distribution, I can certainly do that. So let's start with the big question on everyone's mind, which is virtual meetings. Obviously, we're doing one right here. But are they good? Are they bad? Are people not sure? We got a lot of mixed reactions to this question. And it's undeniable that virtual meetings were crucial in allowing boards to continue meeting during the COVID-19 pandemic. And as we continue to recover from this disaster, many people are asking, how do we bring along these new ways of being, and also the accessibility barriers that were temporarily lifted? We do recognize that virtual meetings are a form of accommodation for those people who have mobility challenges or are otherwise differently abled, or perhaps parents of young children who lack childcare, or those with transportation-related challenges, be it lack of a personal vehicle, the cost of parking, or added commuting time. And we also recognize that some boards are less conducive to virtual than others, and some meetings are statutorily required to be held in person. As well, that fast, reliable internet is a luxury and privilege not afforded to everyone. All of that said, when members were asked which format provided the greatest level of participation by both board members and the public, there was a preference for in-person meetings, about 40%. Another 25% were unsure, followed by 20% who felt virtual was the better platform. And this data is isolated to those serving during 2020 to 2022, so just the pandemic years. Hybrid was not given as an explicit option, but 2 of the 3 other responses that we received did indicate a hybrid as best. And our group actually piloted a hybrid meeting. It did require a smidge of technical know-how, but it was one of the most productive meetings we had, and the meeting where we hammered out most of the survey questions. In the next few sections, I'm going to highlight some specific comments from survey respondents. They are presented verbatim, and the full report includes even more of these. I really encourage you to read those. So when asked about onboarding, there was great inconsistency in experience in the word cloud generated from those comments. The words little, none, and good are most prominent. So quite across the board there. One member of the Urban Forestry Commission said that boards need to know how city budgets and various priorities are set. And another respondent from the same board was concerned that knowledge gained through a term would be lost when those members rotated off the board. When asked about their relationship with city staff members, the comments were generally positive regarding those direct staff relationships. One respondent mentioned staff reductions as a hindrance, saying, staff reductions have impacted this and other boards I follow. There are not enough staff to meet the goals of the comprehensive plan. Regarding director level staff and council liaisons, members felt they were less involved and that this was an obstacle to effectively communicating with council. One member of the Neighborhood Advisory Committee wrote that during their time on the committee, council liaisons attended only a few meetings. This meant it was not possible to get information to city council or from city council through the council liaison. And one comment from a member of the Sustainability Advisory Committee really united these sentiments, that strong staff support and an engaged city council liaison were very valuable in assisting members to navigate local government procedures and connect the dots of their work to policy goals. There was one area where members quite clearly felt defeated or dissatisfied. Just a note on our methodology before I proceed. We measured a positive experience by looking at the percentage of questions that received a positive or affirming response compared to those who had a negative or disaffirming response. And you can read more about our methodology in the full report. But there were 5 questions that had 60% or fewer positive responses. And of those 5, 4 related to the impact of the board's recommendations on policy and council decisions. We also found a correlation between positive and negative response to these 4 questions related to impact and an individual's overall positive or negative sentiment through the survey. So let's dive a little deeper into that relationship with council. We found that many expressed a desire for greater clarity in mission and alignment of their goals with council priorities, and many also called for greater communication between council and the boards. One member wrote that it would be helpful for council to provide direction to what policies and areas of outreach and education they would like the board to focus on. And a member from the Homelessness Initiative Advisory Committee said that HIAC's channel to voice recommendations to City Council are unclear, and that HIAC could be a useful and strong voice if the communication channels were better and clearer. So we're hearing that members want greater clarity in mission and goals. So we looked more closely into those areas to see how members of specific boards responded. There's a lot of data on this slide. And before I get any further into this, I do want to very clearly state that a board having a low positivity score does not mean that it should be eliminated. Instead, what we should do is look more closely at those boards to see where the issues or breakdowns in communication are occurring, and then look to those higher indexing boards for what is working. And we did that specifically for 2 questions. Does your board have clearly defined goals? And who sets those goals for the board? So on the left, we can see responses from members of 2 boards with high positivity scores. That was the Civic Center Commission and the Urban Forestry Commission. Those members felt their board had clearly defined goals and that they knew where those goals were coming from. Compare that with the members of two boards on the right, the Neighborhood Advisory Committee and the Human Relations Commission, which were boards that had lower positivity scores. And in the case of these boards, a notable number did not feel that their board had clear goals, and a few were unsure of who set those goals. There's a lot more data on a board by board basis that you can dig into in the full report. The full report has links to all of those disaggregated reports. Now I'm going to move into the section on respondent recommendations. These are not the recommendations of the realignment working group. They are just suggestions provided by survey respondents. In the word cloud for this question, what changes would you recommend? Council action and goals prominently feature. And again, we're hearing that clearer direction from council is needed with regard to goals. I'm not going to read all of the quotes on these next few slides, but I do encourage you to read them later and also the ones in the full report. Communication was also a strong theme, and members are calling for more frequent two-way communication with council. And outreach was also a major theme. Members want more public input and wider advertisement of their meetings. One respondent said that boards are a great conduit for public input. They can be more accessible and less intimidating than a city council meeting. Now, before I get to the final and most significant highlight of the report, I want to share some demographic findings from the survey. The upper right image shows the percent of respondents who selected each race or ethnic category. That's given in blue. And next to that in orange is Asheville's race data from the most recent census. And what we see is that about 89% of respondents indicated they were white, whereas the latest census reports that Asheville is only 78% white. And further, only 1% indicated they were Black or African, whereas 11% of Asheville is Black. I want to share some caveats here, though, that this section, we only had 60 people respond to this section. That's only half of the total respondents. And the error bars on these are probably pretty wide. There are also reports that indicate members of racial, ethnic, or other minority groups have a tendency to not self-identify when asked these types of questions. So there may be some underreporting just due to that tendency. So although the racial makeup reported here may not be statistically significantly different from census data, it certainly is something that requires some more scrutiny to determine if there is a systemic obstacle for Black citizens participating in boards and commissions. On the lower left, we have a breakdown of membership by age, and we see two age ranges with peak representation. There's the 46 to 55 age group, which could be those professionals who are perhaps at the apex of their careers. They are subject matter experts with technical knowledge, and maybe they have greater flexibility with their schedules. We also see a peak in 66 to 75-year-olds. This is perhaps the newly retired group that now have extra time on their hands and interest in volunteering in their community. There's also a clear lack of younger representation, and this could be for a number of reasons. Maybe they don't know about vacancies because they're posted on platforms that they don't engage with. Maybe they have work conflicts and inflexible schedules, or perhaps they have young kids and lack childcare. Hybrid and virtual meetings could certainly be a solution for some of those issues. And the bottom right shows a breakdown of members' highest level of formal education, 95% of which indicated they have at least a 4-year degree. Now, I admit I don't know the percentage of Asheville residents who hold at least a 4-year degree, but I'm willing to bet that it's far less than 95%. And while some boards might necessitate more advanced knowledge, like the design review committee, for instance, plenty of others don't. And the data suggests that the city may be overvaluing technical knowledge while undervaluing lived experience. And ultimately, these boards make recommendations that affect all Ashevilleans, and their membership should accurately reflect the citizenry. So as I get to my final bit here, if you take nothing else from this presentation and our report, please understand this. The overarching theme from the comments was a feeling of powerlessness. And I have 2 longer quotes here. I am going to read them because I do think they speak for themselves. Serving on the board was a complete waste of time. Great people, completely powerless to make recommendations or changes. We were reported to by staff, but had zero power to make recommendations or change anything. Council never included board in any decisions made around the rec department and facilities. And another member wrote, the commission would be more relevant and more useful to the city if it were given some degree of executive function, some power over the direction of funds allocated, and an overall ability to chart its own course. It is literally powerless and, however well-intentioned, has little real efficacy. In some cases, this feeling of powerlessness actually led some members to end their term of service early. In the word cloud on the left, you see the reasons people gave for ending their service early, some of which were for very typical reasons, health issues, the pandemic, moving. But the most prominent reason was because they felt powerless. And in response to this question, one member from 2021 wrote that ineffectual leadership, board conflict, and a strong belief that my efforts on the board would have no impact. So I'm going to leave you with that message about powerlessness. That was a very central theme. We have our key takeaways again, which I'll come back to in a moment. But first, I want to again acknowledge those individuals listed on the left whose dedication made this work possible, and also to again express our gratitude for the opportunity to share this work with you today. I've provided some helpful links. Sarah, again, I can provide you those links if they're not accessible already in the meeting materials. And as for next steps, we are developing a staff liaison survey, which we aim to conduct and conclude by the end of this year, and to report on those findings in late January, early February. We will then integrate the findings of those 2 surveys to draft recommendations, and our goal is to return to this body with those recommendations in March or April of next year. And at that time, we hope that we will have your support in presenting those recommendations to the full council. Our ask today, though, is for your support in sharing this presentation to the full council. We feel that the findings here provide a lot of context for those forthcoming recommendations, and we feel it's important to dedicate separate time to share these insights. And with that, I'll go back to our key takeaways and ask for any questions. We do have several working group members on hand to answer any questions you may have.
Councilwoman Cooley.
Great presentation. Thank you so much to everyone that's been involved and to Elise for presenting this test today. I know that in addition to all the ways that your group's members are already engaged in community and the responsibilities of everyday life, that you've taken this on as an additional task. It's not lost on me that that's a labor of love and a commitment to our community. And it's a great benefit to have all this information presented, so thank you. I have a couple initial questions. One is the question around hybrid meetings. So I know from our MPO meetings that pre-pandemic, the in-person attendance was so low that we had to have a calculus formula for how to get a quorum. And now that we've had hybrid meetings, it's so successful that we haven't had quorum issues, and we've had the highest attendance of that board, and it's a regional board, but of all time. And so I'm curious, because the infrastructure is not yet in place for hybrid, how did the question either get presented, or how did it come up naturally in conversation? Because I know just from this past week at, say, the Urban Forestry Commission meeting, if hybrid can be an option, would it be on the table, and would it show up differently in the graph? Or because of the infrastructure lacking, just how was it presented and how did it show up?
Sure, great question. There are some ARPA funds that were dedicated to kind of creating some more community meeting spaces that would allow for hybrid meetings, that would require a dedicated staff person to do that. Patrick, feel free to jump in here if you want. But we had Patrick Conant, who orchestrated our hybrid meeting, which he says does not take that much technical know-how, but it would take a dedicated staff person to be able to coordinate that.
Yeah, and I would just add, my understanding is that the city hall's first floor conference room is equipped to do to live stream and have good audio for meetings. And the city has some other spaces with similar equipment. Like we did our hybrid meeting from the Public Works building. But it just seems the city doesn't quite yet have a cohesive plan to both have the equipment and have the staffing to do hybrid meetings consistently at several locations around the city. So I think it's possible we could get there, but we're not there today. And I think it's probably more of a staff challenge than an equipment challenge, because it does take some setup work and the know-how and training to be able to facilitate both virtual participants and in-person ones.
I definitely appreciate that, but can you let me know, as I'm digging into the information provided, this wasn't like a ranked choice vote, right? It's like you, as a participant in the survey, you pick either in-person, not sure, virtual, or to not answer, right?
Right. And I think it's important to understand too that these responses were limited to people from 2020 to 2023. So, as all meetings were virtual for a majority of that time, there was some frustration with some of the drawbacks of the virtual format. So this question doesn't necessarily say that we should drop virtual meetings, but it suggests that really I see a lot of indication that we want the best of both worlds. Some of the benefits of in-person meetings and the accessibility gains by having a hybrid option as well.
Okay, that helps me understand, because if hybrid wasn't even on the list of questions for survey participants, or if it wasn't ranked choice, like for example, I would prefer in-person meetings or a hybrid option, then it does kind of change the available information, though this information is helpful. Sarah, I saw you had your hand up as a staff member.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to confirm that hybrid is very much in the works, and we're from the communications department purchasing that equipment and then working on the staffing piece of that. So there will be more updates at the equity and engagement committee level as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so Nina Talbot.
Just a quick feasibility comment. I attend the executive committee meeting of the Sierra Club here in a room in Ollie, and it's a hybrid meeting. And all that is required for them is a laptop running Zoom, a camera attached to the laptop, and a screen with a projector showing people who are online and in the meeting. The technical demands are pretty basic. Is it perfect? It's not perfect, but it's easily good enough. I have every confidence that the city can provide this kind of basic virtual meeting setup, probably in a box that can go to any room where a meeting is being held. Just my 2 cents there.
Thank you. Those inputs definitely help me understand this in-person versus virtual meeting slide. The second question I had was really, I guess, just for the group as we're getting ready to make a recommendation for this proposal or the presentation to go to the full council. Something that I'm realizing is that when we have advisory boards where we are just making presentations but not asking for input, it can seem to feel like we got the same information we could have gotten from the city's website. But an example of really us engaging our advisory boards in a more meaningful way is when instead of them just reaching out to us, we also reach out to them. So when we had the decision about the Unified Development Ordinance change, considering flag lots and cottage clusters, being able to send that to the Neighborhood Advisory Committee, ask them to hold a public conversation about it, and then to be able to let members of the public know that they could go in person to City Hall to be heard before a recommendation was made. There was a lot of, maybe everyone didn't like the way that the recommendation went down, but it seemed to be a mutual appreciation for the fact that the conversation was had and that the public was invited. And I thought it was a really great way for us to show the value of our advisory board. So I think it's always something that we can do better is making sure that we use our advisory board. It certainly adds to my understanding. So those are the questions that I had for today, was understanding the in-person versus virtual meetings. And also a question that I have for myself and will present to my colleagues is how can we engage our advisory boards so they have more built-in purpose because we're asking them to participate.
Do we have any other questions or responses? Okay, what I would like to say is I would like to thank you all for providing this report for council. I would like to say I've learned so much from it and from this survey. And I'd also like to say that I'd like to commend Sarah, Jerry, and Marcus. They have started, I was able to participate in a couple of orientation, sort of an overview of council's priorities and duties and things like that, that we've actually been able to, a lot of the board members, some type of on-board training. And I can't tell you how invaluable that was for me, just to sit there and listen to all the information that they were able to provide for the board members and what to expect and council priorities and how their participation mattered and how they communicated and with their liaison and with the council itself. So I think that was, to me, I think that's been a lot that was missing, because by bringing it all together under one umbrella and explaining exactly the purpose, everyone's role, it made it sort of a way that the people felt like they could actually participate. And I think that by them preparing these type of orientations as we learn and move along, I think that will help immensely with the how the board's members and councils actually communicate. But because I feel that that type of linkage was missing as to what the relationships were and what each body's responsibility was. So like I said, I've done 2 of those meetings with them, and I can't tell you how successful they were, even for board members coming on, being able to ask questions and understanding their reasoning, their purpose, and what council's priorities were, because a lot of times they don't really even know what the priorities are or what we're working towards. So I'd like to commend them for that excellent job. And I would like to lastly, I guess, move this on to council. And I greatly appreciate all the other work that you're planning on doing to actually delve in other ways to understand the impacts that the boards can have on the council. But I think it's just a matter of bridging that gap of communications, and I think we're on the way there. So
if that's a motion, I'm happy to second.
Okay, so what we're doing is now, is this open for a motion or just for open? It's not really a motion. It's just open for discussion. So,
I saw it on our agenda as discussion, but I also heard the group ask to send it to the full council.
That is our ask today, is that you will support us in giving this presentation to the full council ahead of any recommendations that we prepare.
okay, so you didn't say that, Liz, did you? Was that in the presentation? I didn't see it, so.
I think I just verbally said it.
Okay. So, I would like to check with council members. How do you feel about this motion being presented to the council?
Just from a parliamentary standpoint, usually you make a motion with a recommendation. So it's really as simple as emailing it out to all council members. Is that what the ask is? Because we don't have any request from
Yes,
board.
a formal request.
I guess the way that I was hearing it and I was imagining, because we've been working on this for so long, is we have an option to recommend this to the full council for agenda item. We only have one more meeting after tonight in December before the end of the year. But it's a way to acknowledge the participants and also to keep council aware of the work that's happening and being requested to continue.
So then it's a request to have the city manager place them on a full council agenda.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay. That was the motion.
Second.
Okay.
Okay. Roll call, Councilwoman Miller,
Aye.
Councilwoman Mosley,
Aye.
myself, aye. So that motion passes. Okay, so go ahead.
Thank you very much. We
And
appreciate
thank you very much, Stacy. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And then lastly, on the agenda, we'll just turn it over to the clerk's office if they have any type of updates they might. Oh, okay.
So making sure that we don't drop the ball on making sure that when a group brings forward a recommendation and then we carry it forward, it doesn't somehow dissipate into the ether. What does it look like now that we've made a recommendation for this to move forward? Is this something where we can expect that staff would carry forward our recommendation to the city manager's office?
Well, okay, Councilwoman Mosley, before I say anything. go ahead.
Again, from a parliamentary, the same rules apply. So the city manager can pull it on her own accord, so can the mayor.
Right. And but if it just happens as a conversation in this meeting, who's carrying forward that recommendation? This is why, as a liaison to boards and commissions, I usually bring forward the board and commission recommendation in my liaison report to the full council so they can see what happened. In this situation, from our council committees, I would normally expect, for procedural purposes, for the staff liaison to carry forward the recommendation.
Yes, I think Ben would make it known to.
Yes, I will, Councilwoman Roney, appreciate that. And I will carry forward this recommendation to the manager for her consideration. Absolutely.
Sounds great. Thank you.
And like I said, any other comments? Or if not, we'll turn over to the clerk's office and see if they have any updates for us.
So just a couple updates. Just a reminder that the December meeting has been canceled. So we'll meet next in January, and we do have a handful of appointments to be made. And I also just wanted to plug that we have been in the RFP process and are now contracting with the new board management software. So this is huge for us in the clerk's office and our workload, but also it's going to be much more transparent on the public end too, to be able to see who's on the board and who's coming off and upcoming vacancies. So it'll also look a little bit different as far as our appointment process. It might look a little cleaner. So stay tuned, but we're hoping you'll see some changes at the beginning of the year. So just wanted to give you the heads up. And that is it for me. I'm looking at the speaker queue. I do not see any callers in there.
So, yes, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all.